Okay, hello everybody. This is Neil Green, President and CEO of JABOY Productions, and welcoming you all to today's Elite RIA and Family Office Virtual Conversations live webinar. We have a very exciting day. Let's start off with some really exciting news. We are going to Rome, Italy. Our next independent Elite RIA and Family Office Global Leaders Conference will be March 11th through the 14th at the beautiful Westin Excelsior in Rome, Italy. We say La Dolce Vita, which is the good life. We'll all be together, hopefully, to celebrate. And again, the theme is invest in yourself. For more information, you can look at our website, which is jaboyproductions.com. We will start with email campaigns for invitations and such probably next week. But in any event, you are first to know about our opportunity to be in Rome, Italy, again, exclusively for independent RIAs and family offices. And again, more information to come on that. Our media partner, the DIYer, for those of you that follow alternative investments and want to keep up to date with the news and events that are happening out there in the alternative investment world, the DIYer is the source, as well as all our events are posted on the DIYer. So again, continue to watch that. With questions today, we will keep everybody throughout the program on mute. However, you are free to ask questions and anything you'd like to ask for Angelo and Vince, our speakers. Please do the questions on the tab at the bottom of that Zoom webinar, and we will present those at the end. So with that, let's get into the presentation, which today's topic is wealth preservation for the super rich. And hopefully a lot of those that are on today are in that category. If not, you know people that are in that category. In any event, this will be presented by Angelo Robles, which is the founder and chairman of Family Office Association. It will be moderated by Mr. Vince Annable, which is founder and CEO of VFO Advisory Group. And with that, I would like to now turn it over to Mr. Vince to kick off the program here. Vince, you there?
I am here. Thanks, Neil. Thank you, Angelo. Well, I think we're going to have quite a session today. Hopefully everybody has their notebook out, because I know Angelo, and I know he is going to throw some nuggets out there people are going to want to do a little research on. So with that, Angelo, how are you?
Yes, sir. One of my favorite people, Vince. I'm doing great. I love your questions because you always throw curveballs and sliders. I don't want to be overly prepared. And a shout out to Neil and his wonderful organization. They do such a great job. And I don't know anyone that has the energy that that guy has. I wish I had like 10% of it.
Yeah, I was at the Elite JABOY conference in Miami just before everybody started shutting down. And that was an exciting event. So I'm really looking forward to going to Rome, Italy. And one of the reasons I'm excited about that is because we're going to be launching our documentary mini movie in Rome. That'll be the global release of our new documentary film on virtual family offices. And it is being produced and directed by Nick Nanton, who is a 16-time Emmy award-winning director, producer. So we're excited about that. We're excited about releasing that from Rome, Italy, La Dolce Vita. So Neil, we're going to kick it off. You have to be quiet now, buddy.
I'm leaving it up to you. You I have the front and center. Take it away.
All right. So, Angelo, as you know, we're talking about single family offices. We talk about virtual family offices. Just to help out the listening audience today, could you talk a little bit about what a single family office is? I'm sure most everybody on here understands that term, but then we also have virtual family offices. And we also have the fact that a lot of single family offices are going virtual. So maybe you could spread that out a little bit for us.
Say in today's COVID world, we're practically all virtual, which has been something for a couple of years that I've been talking about. And pre-COVID, I did a pretty comprehensive white paper on the rise. I kind of like that word in a lot of my writing, the rise of the virtual family office. And you, Vince, have been certainly ahead of the curve. So, kudos to you. I am not tied down to one definition of the verbiage family office or single family office. At the end of the day, it's whatever the really, really rich family wants it to be. It may be more concierge centric. It may be more investing centric. It may be virtual. It may be in person. It may simply take care of distributions for the family. That's the whole magic of broadly a family office. It's whatever that family wants it to be. But if I had to give you, since we're most focused on single family offices, an entity created by one family of great wealth to internally and exclusively manage their affairs. But like you noted, what's a virtual family office and how has that been impacted, especially now during COVID? I've recommended, and every single family office I know pre-COVID, whether they wanted to admit it or not, they had some element of being a virtual family office already. Now it's just being accelerated. What do they say during COVID and technology? What was going to happen in 5 years is like happening right now. And it's a little scary, but it's kind of fun too, because I think a lot of us are realizing we should have done this years ago. And that's some of the research, both with me and my company and my billion-dollar families that I've interviewed this summer, that basically is the theme that I heard from many of them. So in answering the second part of your question, basically, what is a virtual family office to me? And this is just my definition. It still is a single family office per se. It has the structure, which we'll get into the reasons why, and it goes to lender versus the IRS that came out December of 2017 with tax enhancements. So you still want to have, in my opinion, even if it's just one person there, you want to have the structure of a family office, and you're going to utilize technology systems and outsourcing more than a more traditional all-in-house single family office. But you could still outsource from investing to other services. And as opposed to being tied down to those expenses and people that would be internal, you have the flexibility of it being outsourced. And in other words, you could replace them a lot easier if they're not getting the job done. So those are personally my definitions. Vince, you're muted.
There we go. So
Yes.
now we've got that taken care of. How has COVID-19 impacted single family offices in your experience?
And that is going to relate even more to the virtual family office. You know, a lot of them didn't see this coming. I don't know if I really saw it coming, maybe January or February. So it caught them off guard. You know, did they really have the systems in place to work remotely, let alone the technology? What happens if one person does something, they get COVID, they're remote, and now is there a backup plan? Is there something in the cloud that illustrates, here's how we do this, here's how we approve wires? So it forced in kind of a good way, the families and the family offices to adapt, no matter who they were. Even a $50 billion plus single family office, they had no choice. And wishful thinking, it would blow over and things would return back to normal by the summer in a couple of months, obviously never came true. Now, perhaps there's a little bit of an end in sight relative to good news on the vaccines, but this is still going to take months and months to play out. And like I said, what was going to happen is happening now. And what I will say, and I've been critical of many single family offices, what I will say is the vast majority, damn it, give them credit. They've actually adapted very well. Now, you're familiar. This summer, I did a project with 7 of my biggest families, all multi-billion, one in the Forbes 20, deep dive interviews with the family office executives. And they basically said, I should have been doing this years ago, but I needed the impetus of COVID. There's value to working remotely. And I had to adapt how I lead, how I manage. We had to adapt our systems. We had to upgrade our technology, communication, project management software, account aggregation, reporting. This is, for the most part, all been enhanced. The family offices, for the most part, have adapted well. So going back to the virtual family office, to me, it's still a family office. They often have to do more with less. And again, systems and technology and outsourcing. And I go back to, you still want to have the structure of a family office because you're able potentially, and Lender versus the IRS, December of 2017 illustrated this. There could, now it gets complex with how to intertwine non-family members, carry and all that, and a little bit centric to US families, I'll agree, but there could be tax enhancements as well. And that Lender family, by the way, they outsourced a lot and they still got great tax enhancements. So just because you outsource does not mean that you're not a family office, but you probably want to have the right structures and governance in place to really, have your game plan and your process to an outcome.
We're going to talk about that governance in a minute, but while we're talking about being adaptive, how can the single family offices stay fresh and adaptive to black swans and other threats that come along the way that we're not expecting?
Man, there's no easy way to answer that one. I will go to the great philosopher,
Curveball.
Tyson. Yeah, curveball. So Mike Tyson is renowned for his phrase, we all have a plan until we get hit. But sometimes that's not what the family wants to hear. So the example that I give is you have to be quantitative and qualitative. You have to have a sense of how could you measure, because if you can't measure, how you're going to be able to improve. But the example that I give is you could say, well, as an executive, I'm correct 94.3% of the time. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, but the 6 or 7% that you're wrong, suppose the results are devastating. The family is not going to care that you're right a lot more often than wrong. So you have to look at, I'm not going to be right with every decision that we make. How do we what systems do we have in place? What's our process? Do goals need to be adapted with changing circumstances? How liquid should we be? And if we're wrong, whether me, the team, a committee, a board, even the family, depending on who's involved, and again, that goes back to governance. So governance is huge. How decisions are made, which is governance. What's the consequences of being wrong? We're going very concentrated into public equities, and that's going to be 90% of our portfolio. We're going to be very liquid. We're going to control. Yeah, that sounds good in theory, but what happens if the markets, things are so topsy-turvy with COVID, with the election, which is still a little bit undecided here in the US, to the economy, with COVID making the second rebound, especially in the Northeast, and restaurants closing, and entrepreneurs and the impact on the economy. If that market were to go down, that could be devastating to the family. And as an executive, how many jobs in a family office are there? So that lends most executives to want to play it safe and conservative. We could argue that. So a couple of points around that. One, always be paranoid. This world is a hell of a lot less efficient than we think it is. A hell of a lot. We saw it in COVID. There's just so many different things going on. So if be paranoid, have a beginner's mindset, always be learning. You also want to talk to the smartest people in the room. When you're always the smartest person in the room, you're not learning anything. You're having confirmation bias. So you want to surround yourself. You're like a football coach. You want to hire great assistant coaches. Now, what does that mean? It's great, but it also means they're probably going to leave you inevitably because they're going to be attractive to others. I'd rather have that than have a team that no one's attracted to. So surround yourself with the brightest people. The best idea wins. Forget title. Be mentored, have coaching, stress test what you're doing, have outsiders come in because you often get too siloed. Learn how to make better decisions. And I know that's a little bit of a vague comment, but there's a process to help do that and to have some level of checks and balances and hedge your risk. Now, I know that could go both ways. Well, we're going to be heavily in cash, so we're liquid. The markets go down, are not going to be impacted. Well, the markets concentrated, but have done really well. So sitting on the sidelines may not have been the best move in the world. But do you then get only into private companies? Maybe, but then you're going to be very illiquid. What happens if things really go to hell in a handbasket? So then that intertwines, how do I hedge risk? What diversity do I have in my portfolio? What percentage in cash? Now, putting my cards on the table, because I'm really big on mitigating risk and hedging risk, and how the super rich stay rich is they take risk, but they're very calculated. They're hedging their downside as much as possible, and they don't let their ego get in the way. When we're wrong about a decision, like Bruce Kovner, the legendary hedge fund manager at Caxton, stop loss, boom, we're out. Go on to the next idea. It's over. But at least we only took a hit, whatever, of 3 or 5%, not much, much more. So I am a big believer in American families being more diverse globally, onshore and offshore structuring, onshore and offshore investing. I'm a big believer in gold. I'm not going to go crazy with the audience here about Bitcoin and crypto, but I'm a believer as a store of value. It's something that more families, and I know many of them are, should be more familiar with. And, I talk all the time about buying banks in Switzerland, why that's great from a risk mitigation perspective, why it's great from an investing perspective, why you control the risk, you control to some degree the custody. Setting up offshore insurance companies, mitigating tax risk with private placement life insurance, probably offshore. I mean, there's so many, there's not one, you all wish there was one perfect strategy that a family could do that could mitigate tax risk, wealth transfer, investment risk. There's no such thing. I speak to the biggest billionaires, their best attorneys and accountants, literally the ones that deal with people in the Forbes 10 or 20. There's hundreds of things these families could do. The reality is they won't. It's too time consuming and it also costs too much money. So what's going to be their biggest pain point and what's the lowest hanging fruit that you could do? Is it a foreign asset protection trust? Is it resources here and there? How do you structure what you're doing in your dynasty trust? You have to kind of pick your battles because they're not going to do all 100 or 200 things that to make that perfect moat around the castle that they should. That's just the reality of it.
Well, speaking of that moat around the castle that they have built, what are some of the most significant and important factors within the single family office?
The most important, to me, there's a big three. And probably in this sequence, people. If you don't have the right people in your single family office, you're screwed. Families are notorious for being too frugal. Families are notorious for not hiring the best of the best, unfortunately. They often give little coaching and mentorship to even make it better. And they often don't provide some of the resources, including the systems and the technologies, which we'll get to in a second. They do a safe hire of someone that they trust, and trust is incredibly important. But what is that person that you're plucking that you've known for decades? What do they know about building a team, about coaching up, about diversity in the workforce, about the value of younger people? There's so many different nuances than a pure skill set that go into the quality of building your team. And again, this comes back to governance, how we make decisions within the family, how we communicate. So you want to have the right people, you want to pay them properly, you want to have amazing communication, and they're not going to be perfect. Now, yeah, I know I gave that example earlier that they could be wrong 6% of the time, but the risk could be devastating. Well, that's the value of having processes, systems, some of the hedges and risk mitigation that I mentioned earlier, and bringing in outside resources to stress test what they're doing, but having that beginner's mindset about it. I could go on and on for hours about the value of people. And I often hear from talented people that turn down opportunities in an SFO that, Angelo, I felt there was nepotism in the family, how it transitioned to the family office. Was I being spied upon by inside the family who wasn't qualified, promises that weren't delivered upon, handshake deals on compensation that never came through? I mean, all of that has to stop. So what that comes down to is build it with rigor and institutional quality. And here in Greenwich, we have some of the hedge fund managers that have built amazing family offices that mitigate risk. They pay a lot of money for top people, and they're doing a lot of this right. So if you're not going to do it right and you don't want to be great, then don't get involved in having specifically a more traditional single family office. So it's people number one, it's your systems number two, and that's more important during COVID and remote than ever before. Having the right practices, having the right processes, having the right mindset, and a formula in place. If something goes down, someone else could step up. And then certainly technology has become more and more important than ever before. And maybe I'll turn that around a little bit to you, Vince. I mean, you're one of the true experts and just amazing at what you do on the virtual family office. So you're going to be really amazing about how do you vet outsource providers, about technology, and about the value of being responsible for your wealth and legacy, but relying on people that are also dedicated in their talent, that are the best of the best. So how do you see that intertwine with the important steps to have a successful virtual single family office?
Well, we have found, just like a single family office, the virtual family office, one of the keys, most important factors is making sure that there is a team approach and there's a lot of communication amongst the team in dealing with whatever the issues are that need to be discussed for this particular family. We want to be able to have it out on the table. It's available for everybody to discuss what are the most important issues we need to try to resolve, and be able to have these thought leaders, these experts, if you will, take the time to study this particular family or these issues and look at it from their particular expertise and be able to work on putting together a synchronized, systematic plan for whatever family issues we're trying to deal with.
And, because you deal with an amazing number of families, you get a chance to develop some benchmarking and best practices, which is true. And I do the same in the work that I do. But I think the exciting part of what we do, and you're even more hands-on from this perspective, is every family's different. Their goals are different. So you may develop benchmarks and best practices, but what you're designing and intertwining with the family, I'm sure it's customized for every family.
Has to be. Everything is personalized. You cannot take a cookie cutter approach to anything, because when you're talking about families with this amount of wealth, everybody has different complexities, if you will, and those complexities need to be addressed specifically, not generically.
That's for sure. And maybe before you get to the next question, a question came in from one of the participants, Vitali. I'm going to read it, then I'll knock it off my screen so maybe we could answer it. He's asking, on average, what percentage of assets do SFOs invest internationally? Do they invest in public equities, private companies, or other assets? I'll answer that from my perspective. We've always been global, but that has been incredibly accelerated since COVID-19. One, I have a platform. I have a home studio. I do these daily. We're a membership organization, a family office association, and I've never been more active globally with the Rolodex of my families from, Europe to LATAM, to Singapore, Hong Kong, you name it. It's been really engaging. So I'm going to answer that question from an American family perspective. They are not the way that I would like to see them be more active internationally. And I'm trying to change that. That's why I talk about setting up onshore and offshore structures, why I talk about banks in Switzerland, offshore insurance companies, owning public equities, owning private companies more diversely than just simply in the US. The US stock market has done amazing in the last 10 years, but nothing stays the same. Things change. To give you an example, in Southeast Asia alone, there's 2.4 million, or more than that, but let's go with that. There's billions, I'm sorry, what billions of people. In North America, there's like 400 million. So the market of growing wealth is so amazing in Southeast Asia. You're telling me that there's not going to be great purchasers of goods, great entrepreneurs that are going to come from there? Of course there is. Is it a little scarier and more risky? Sure. But in today's world, for a variety of reasons, picking strategic outsource partners, vetting, diligence, American families need to look more diverse in their interest. Right now, it's pretty low. Wealthy families around the world tend to be more diverse than US families are. And they tend to be more active in public companies. And again, I'm a big gold guy, so owning it offshore, perhaps out of the banking system. I am a believer in owning income producing businesses, private businesses. I used to be big on farmland because of some tax benefits, but some concern in certain countries, if things go wrong, that government feeding its people is number one. They may take it from you. I'm very interested in global real estate. And this goes back to the wealth preservation question, which again, I could do 6 hours about that. Actually, in one of my master classes, I kind of did that. So I would like to see American families look more globally and become more diverse. It's been slow. And Vince, from your side, since you're probably even more hands-on with the families you deal with in the US on investing, how have you seen their allocations internationally? Has it been pretty low and staying that way? Or maybe during COVID, is it starting to go up?
No, it's actually been pretty low, especially in the last 6 months during COVID, et cetera. Most of what we do, we have a chief investment officer that goes through all of our portfolios, but we really use a foundation of an endowment style model. I actually wrote a book on that last year called The Household Endowment Model, which
great book
is for, thank you, which is for affluent families, and it's for the super rich. And they need to understand the biggest concept most people don't get is diversification amongst many different asset classes, both public and private. So our models are built around this endowment style model. We always encourage more on the international side now, but a lot of people are still uncertain. Now they're uncertain about what's going on in the US and now want to look overseas. So as you were saying, everything changes on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, I go back, I see someone who might be listening in that I know, sent me a text wanting me to expand a little bit more, relative to, because Angelo, you're so big on preserving wealth. So yes, I look at it as if you're a super rich family, and that may mean different things to different people, maybe a minimum of 100 million. Often I would argue $1 billion or more. Yeah, you could stay on the sidelines, put a good percentage in cash and still be rich. However, look at that. Look at the impact over time, maybe limited in taxation, but of inflation, which I would think is going to go up, and the purchasing power. But you can make that point. At least I have cash on hand for distressed opportunity, which is inevitably happening a little slower than we expected, actually. But there's going to be lots of real estate and other opportunities that are going to be at significant discounts, which again, for real hardcore investors and longer term families, could be some very, very interesting opportunities that we are starting to see. But he knows. One of the things I talk a lot about, and I don't mean to scare the audience too much here, but again, I have to be the moat around the castle. I have to be what happens if you're wrong. Are the consequences, not so bad, or are they devastating? And that's how a single family office executive should think if they want to be in this business for the long haul and get paid properly. So that comes down to government confiscation. So I would have had this discussion, and I did last year, the year before that. Here in the US, it's not impossible. Things could go wrong. First of all, the government takes your money all the time. They do that through taxation. So with a stroke of a pen and taxes going up, they could keep on taking your money while living, and of course, through the estate tax here in the US upon death. And there's also something called civil and federal forfeiture. And don't think that they need to really prove things perfectly for the government. And I know I sound like a wild-eyed libertarian, but talk to families in Venezuela, talk to families in most other parts of the world. It's not impossible for things to go wrong, for bank accounts to be frozen, for your passport to get a knock on the door and have it pulled by the government, which is why I have become more of an advocate of thinking globally, a foreign asset protection trust, of start over funds, of funding that with gold, often out of the banking system, and the value of resources to some degree that are a little off the grid. Of course, one being Bitcoin and crypto. I'm a big advocate of families in art, in real estate, in certain private companies. And, we could get into foreign asset protection trusts, private trust companies, what states in the US are going to be best from a privacy and asset protection perspective. But a lot of this is going to come down to don't make really, really bad decisions. When you make bad decisions on a marriage partner and that leads to divorce, that could set you back. I mean, that may be the end of it if you don't have proper structures in place. Litigation, intra-family squabble. And a lot of this comes down to governance, making proper decisions, being an active listener within the family, engaging all generations in the family, and having somewhat of a process for how key decisions are made. We're not going to have the time to get into it today, but for families of great wealth to last really generation after generation, assuming that's of interest to them, it's going to come down to the next generation, how they're educated, how they're a steward, how they're a good steward in society, let alone the family, how philanthropy plays into that. So these are all intertwined and incredibly complex, but to me and you, Vince, and hopefully others, that kind of makes it fun. It makes it invigorating because each situation is just so different.
Amen to that. So we jumped around a lot in there, and we were in and out talking about wealth preservation, and you were anticipating one of my questions. So obviously, I better ask this question. So your key takeaways for wealth preservation in a single family office?
Well, but I probably already hinted at them.
I think you did. Maybe you can just throw a few bullet points out there.
You want to have governance, how decisions are made. And the easiest is I created the wealth. I'm the king. I make the decisions. We're a board of an uneven number of 3, but there's just one decision maker, right? So like that's gonna work in the short term. That's not gonna work if you have children or grandchildren and you want to teach true governance. Look at corporations that have done it right, often ahead of families. And you want to be able to engage the generations to have more of a democratic process in place, so to speak. And if you don't get that right, if you don't get the proper stewardship and education in the next gen, and again, engaging philanthropy as a teaching tool, no matter what you do on investing in taxes, it probably won't work because there'll be squabble, intra-family litigation, which I've seen last for decades, poor decisions, possibly leading to drug and alcohol use, divorce. I mean, you all know this already. I don't have a magic bullet, and it's not just one investment or one foreign asset protection trust that's going to make all of that go away. So you got to get, that house in order and have somewhat of a governance and a process first and foremost. You have to understand what your goals are. But my experience with billion-dollar families, I mean, honestly, sometimes their goals change day by day. So a family office, you need to be nimble. And that goes back to the original point of this webcast that we're doing now. Why have a single family office? Because of privacy, control, and customization. And if you're concerned about wealth preservation for the super rich, having an entity and the right people 24/7 dedicated to you, how could it get better than that? But you better do it with rigor and institution. And again, bring the right quality of people and pay them properly. These are all things that families often start to fall down upon, which is why most families don't have a family office that even lasts beyond one generation, and why much of their wealth will often dissipate by the third. Do it right, have governance. In my opinion, have a single family office of stupendous quality, of rigor and institution. And that sometimes means you got to change people. They may also get plucked to other entities and organization, and that's fine. Like I gave the sports analogy earlier, that means other people are finding your people great and talented. There's nothing wrong with that. Understand that things could go wrong. I mentioned government confiscation of assets and resources and being diversified. You're not really being diversified for the sake of it's going to make me a greater return. You make greater returns by being concentrated, but you take a level of more risk doing that. But again, if you're the moat around the castle, you need to hedge against those kind of risk. and black swans and read everything that Nassim Taleb writes, because that guy is brilliant. Read the work of Jim Rickards. We've had Jim speak, and we've had Nassim Taleb speak years ago at Family Office Association. Those are two brilliant people that I love. Nassim Taleb, Jim Rickards, and you don't have to agree with everything they talk about. Again, have the beginner's mindset, be a lifelong learner, have people that are going to challenge you. You're not right all the time. Surround yourself with the smartest people and adapt and change them. Make the best idea win. Now, yeah, we could get into setting up the proper structures, LLCs, private trust company in Wyoming, single family office structure in Delaware, how they intertwine, how you get tax enhancements, setting up a satellite family office in Zurich, or maybe more of an Asian or other family in Singapore. Singapore is great as well. But, these are deep technical dives that we could go on for hours and hours about. And I usually save them more for what I call my masterclass programs. At the end of the day, Vince, this comes down to it's whatever the family wants. They're going to be the final arbitrator and decision maker. And how do you help to keep your job in a family office besides not being horrifically wrong on some things that's going to cost the family? Communicate. When you have bad news, communicate that, be on top of it, show that you care, show that you're looking at ways to hedge or mitigate it, or, possibly there's dislocations like we're seeing in COVID that creates, like I said, opportunity for family. When there's dislocation and things are going haywire, that also means there's opportunity. Now, may that come with a little bit of a long-term commitment and not without its risk? Of course. Again, if it was easy, we'd all be billionaires. We'd all be doing it. Every situation is the same and completely different. That's kind of the takeaway. This industry is too small and fragmented. How many billionaires are there? Let's even say 3,000 around the world, and they're private. They often don't share with another. So benchmarking and best practices is really, really hard. I'm one of the larger organizations dedicated to the community, and I don't have enough resources. And I survey and talk to these families all the time. It's still not enough. And the world is changing so quickly that what worked 6 months ago is not going to work today. I'll give you another, and I hate to keep on using football analogies, but I am a big sports guy, and football is like the greatest from coaching the players to analogies. So American college football fans, running the wishbone from the 1970s is not going to work in today's world. I mean, you could argue it's such contrarian, maybe short term it will. Yeah, even Alabama completely adapted their offense 2 or 3 years ago to be much, much more of a passing team. What worked even pre-COVID 8 or 9 months ago, you may need to completely remodel that now in today's world.
Well, you were reading the tea leaves on my next question, I can tell. So research is very important in what we are doing for these single family offices. You've written a couple of books. In order to write a good book on single family offices and maximizing single family offices, you have to have a lot of research. So what does your research show is an SFO's most critical obligation to the family?
It's whatever the family wants, and you better be a great communicator. And I know that sounds a little simplistic, and some of that is going to come back to governance and decision-making as well. And these are all things that I keep on pounding. It comes down to people, then systems, then technology, and how you integrate them. But in answering your question from a little different perspective, I'm very proud of the book I wrote, which was more focused on leadership, that I individually wrote in 2017, Effective Family Office, and the book that I co-wrote with someone that and Russ Allen Prince, and Peter Sasaki and John Bowen were, also co-authors in that. And, I think the world of all of them, and Russ Allen Prince is great. So his thought leadership and research too is amazing. There's not too many of us out there, but here's what I will say, humbling myself yet again, I hope, it becomes dated so quickly, because even the process of writing a book, and by the time you get it out there, and then what COVID comes along, and yeah, some things are evergreen. governance, how families make decisions, and leadership to a degree. So I'm proud of that. But things change so quickly, which is why in today's world, from blogging to YouTube videos to daily Zooms, which is something that I do almost all the time, how could you have the latest at the fingertips and realize what might have worked yesterday may not work today? It's, yeah, some people are going to say, you know, history repeats itself, and they're kind of both right and wrong, but everything is changing so quickly now with technology, with AI, with COVID, I mean, look at the angst we had in this country, you know, with the election. Now, what's going to happen when more and more jobs become more difficult as AI and robotics come in? Is that going to cause more income inequality? Is that going to cause an uprising? Is that going to cause, you know, what we're seeing in Portland and Seattle from a little earlier in the year? So there's lots of risk out there. And, you know, I don't have the answers, but I would like for you to do inductive and deductive thinking and reasoning. And again, surround yourself with smart people that think globally. And these are all things that we should be doing as organizations, because the benchmarking we're doing is not enough. The best practices we're doing, it's all helpful, but it's not enough because things are changing so rapidly. I find that I need to reinvent myself. I mean, I would have said a couple of years ago, once every couple of years. Now I literally feel, to me, it feels like every 4 to 6 weeks. And I'm going to turn that question a little back on you, Vince, because again, you're an amazing thought leader and have great experiences, really hands-on with families. I mean, what are you seeing from research and benchmarking and best practices and how things are changing?
I would definitely agree with you on communication. People want to be educated as to what their options are, what's happening out there. How do I protect? How do I put that moat up? And we see an awful lot of people that are concerned and worried about where taxes are going to be going. We see them concerned about even some with confiscation in the United States. I know that's a conspiracy theory out there, but people with money want to preserve it. Wealth preservation is most important. And when they turn on the news at night, they become concerned about what may happen to their wealth. And again, more reasons to be talking about these offshore entities, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, there's a question that came in. I'm going to read it from Kevin Prine. With some concern around the U.S. government's acquisition, freezing of assets, sounds like a gentleman after my heart here. What geographic countries would you look toward with regard to real estate and other investments? One, I think America is a great country, and there's many families of great wealth that want to be very active here. We have a powerful military, contract law. We have a big, beautiful country, great natural resources, wonderful people. And most other developed countries in the world, they very actively share information with their residents of wealth and their holdings. It's like really hard from a tax perspective, and more so from a privacy perspective. America is basically like, no, you have someone international that sets up a Wyoming LLC or a private trust company. We're not going to share anything with you in another country. Now that may change. So the US does some things amazing, but I would still be a little concerned of some of the things that I'm seeing, and don't think it's impossible. I don't know, executive order, freezing banks. You can't get your gold or resources out. Government confiscation, taxation, civil forfeiture, bad. I was going to use a word I shouldn't use. Let's go with stuff, but the other word started with an S too. Bad stuff happens. Again, talk to billionaires from Venezuela, Russia, and many, many other countries over the years. But it looks like that person wanted, okay, we know you're pounding that, Angelo, but give us some other countries. I was a little disappointed with Switzerland back in 2008. And no country's perfect, but I think that they're a country that's intriguing. Now, becoming a citizen there is incredibly hard. It's a 10-year process. I would look at, if you're a US citizen that is looking for some level of optionality, like dual citizenship, I would look at EU countries, probably Cyprus is going to be the easiest to buy into. It might have been Malta, but they're on a bit of a freeze now. You could go by heritage. If you're relatively recent of Italian or Irish heritage, that might also be able to get you residency and dual citizenship. And then you could still apply for work or business interest in a country like Switzerland. So I would look at Canada, underrated. And I don't believe any estate tax, although not great on other things with taxation. So, you have the US, you have Canada, you have Switzerland, Singapore, especially for Asian families, but I would look at it overall. Lots of tremendously smart people and great things going on there, and certainly good law. Countries not great on taxes, but simply it may be more of a social and lifestyle thing. Sweden, Australia, New Zealand. I sometimes get asked about the Caribbean countries. I love to go there. I think there's great things, amazing people. And I would consider Nevis and Cook Islands with setting up foreign asset protection trust. But I don't know if it's a country that I would want to, move to and be a citizen there or have all my assets there. They're tiny Caribbean countries, and less are their passports being honored by other countries. The EU is probably still going to be the safest bet for people to look at alternative options. And I know what some people are going to say, Angelo, you're pretty big on owning businesses and real estate, but suppose it gets taken from you. And again, these things happen in countries. I would say it may take years, if not decades, but eventually, if you got proper title to art, to real estate, you might be able, it's the wrong word, but to repatriate that asset back to your family lineage. There is no perfect answer. Like I said, having it all in cash is not the perfect answer. You'll get crushed by inflation, and suppose the dollar gets devalued, inflation goes up, banks get closed down. I mean, I hate to sound like Mr. Negative, but when you're in a single family office, you got to be concerned that so much could go terribly, terribly wrong.
Well, I'll tell you what, you just scared the pants off of me. I'm moving. Just kidding.
Well, hey, I mean, like I said, the US is amazing, but I would just be aware to keep your optionality, your fluidity.
Optionality, keyword. That's
Yes.
like diversification, another keyword.
Yes, there you go.
I think we have covered our list of questions. I think we are probably running close to out of time. I don't like Neil coming out with his hook. So Neil Green, I guess maybe we'll turn it back over to you.
And if I could maybe have one final comment, Vince.
Sure.
And again, I'm going to give a shout out to you. Your book was great. So I really loved what you did on the endowment model and how you talk about that. There's great work that you're doing. And anyone, a family, an advisor looking to work with you should absolutely look at the great dedication that you do and the work that you do. And I'm certainly a big fan. And, Neil as well, I use the word, he's like Mr. Energy. I'm going to give my age away a little bit now. What do they call James Brown? Like he's like the hardest working man in show business, the hardest working man in family office and finances, and a great guy is Neil. So, kudos to him and his wonderful organization. From my perspective, a little bit, sometimes I get asked, you may be a little crazy, Angelo, but I'm kind of interested. I mean, I'm pretty easy to find. Yeah, there's my books, but again, books get dated relatively quickly. I'm very active almost daily with my members via daily Zooms. I have a podcast. It's called the Angelo Robles Podcast. It used to be called Effective Family Office, but I rebranded it back in June. So it's on all the big platforms, the Angelo Robles Podcast, and really how I most engage with people. And I'm very active on social media. We're simply Family Office on YouTube. But through my family office association, where I'm the founder and CEO, we're a membership organization. You could look us up online at familyofficeassociation.com. And we're valuable to families, I hope, to family office executives and select advisors in the community, putting me at their fingertips, my content, my resources, and all we do every week. I've never been so busy as I am now, especially globally during COVID. So I only ask to check us out, consider me a friend in the community, and feel free to reach out to me anytime. You could certainly find me.
That's for sure. You're all over the place. Just
yeah,
Google
maybe
him.
too much.
He's everywhere. Neil? Any thoughts?
Vince, yeah, Vince, what about yourself? Actually, one of the questions that I always hear for a lot of people that we talk to is, how do you actually start a single family office? Are there any key things you need to actually work on to actually structure that?
Well, there's a big difference between, if you're directing that at me regarding the virtual family office, that's a different answer than how do you start a single family office. For that answer, I would defer to Angelo. As far as a virtual family office, what you really need to do is become committed to the process of finding the top professional experts that you can work with, that you can set up a relationship with, whether it be legal or accounting or real estate or insurance or whatever it might be. You need some of the sharpest minds available to help you do a team approach to work with your families, their wealth, their complexities, and their issues. Because you're not hiring them, you don't have to pay them a salary. If you're doing a single family office, that's going to be typically, as you've heard from Angelo today, there's going to be a blend there. There's going to be, some of these people are going to be virtual, but some of these people are also going to be employees, and all they do is work for the family. I think the key for the virtual family office is being able to find the right experts so that when a family comes to you and they have issues, and probably one of the best solutions we have come up with is doing a stress test, whether that be comprehensive or targeted on whatever issue they may be concerned about. We need to have the best experts in the country, the most knowledgeable, to be able to fulfill that stress test.
And then Vince, you talked briefly about this endowment model. What does that look like right now in light of COVID? How does that endowment model look?
I think the endowment model looks great because you don't have, one of the biggest things you've got is you have a lack of volatility. With all the volatility we've had this year from COVID to the election, many people don't want their entire portfolio on a roller coaster. So what we want to do is be able to diversify and have non-public. It might be in venture capital, could be in private equity, in all different asset classes of real estate. So it's basically a diversification process, and it works quite well as long as your objective is not to hit home runs all the time. Just like Angelo talked about before, if you want to hit home runs all the time, you need to be concentrated. But if you want to mitigate risk and maintain your assets, then you need to have diversification. And we think an endowment model is one of the best ways to do that.
Right. And Angelo, for you, what do you think? How are family offices at this point sourcing ideas for investment?
Well, I mean, certainly families have been very, very active as direct investors. Now, a lot of it has been talk and maybe not as much action. And to be really active in direct investing, you have to really ask yourself, how dedicated are you going to be to it? Are you really building out the right team, which is going to cost a lot of money because you're probably competing with investment banks and with private equity firms. So are you really going to put the dedication behind it? And we have families that tell us, yeah, we're active direct investors. We love the fact that we have control, that we can engage the next generation into how businesses are built. But when we look at the math, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, we might have been better off investing through quote unquote a quality fund. We didn't get too deeply into that. I'm based in Greenwich, but I've been rather negative on hedge funds for a number of years. And now I'm starting to see some good things from certain managers that if you're really concerned about hedging risk, and there's also tail risk strategies, there are a variety of things that families should do. Some should be allocators and LPs, some direct investors, and again, assets like I mentioned some before, like gold and others that, yeah, some people think they hold down your portfolio. They don't. You're already rich. They help to hedge risk, and how you balance that and allocate from within it is going to be very, very important. There's more platforms than ever before for access to private companies and direct deal flow. Back in the days of physical events, organizations like yours and mine, presented a chance for families to come together and to share and collaborate. And they're adapting now in a digital world. But it was maybe a little bit easier back in the day, just 8 months ago.
Right. What about life insurance and strategies using life insurance? Do you believe in that strategy, either one of you?
I am an extreme advocate. Extreme. I probably should be a spokesman for the industry. If you're a very, very wealthy family that owns alternative assets, you're crazy if you're not looking at private placement life insurance. Maybe a combination of onshore and offshore. The income tax protection is amazing. The wealth transfer, the access to your resources, tax favored. I talk all about the complexities of buying banks and how tough and hard that is, about setting up offshore reinsurance companies. These are expensive, complex, and time consuming. PPLI, for some families, does better than both of them. For others, helps to accomplish what they need. And it's much, much easier. So I'm a big fan of private placement solutions, specifically in life insurance.
Yeah,
Vince?
I would agree with the PPLI, private placement life insurance, but you also have to be able to consider sometimes you can't get insurance. You might be uninsurable, so you need to look at a private placement annuity type concept, variable annuity concept, but also traditional life insurance for estate planning. Somebody may not have, typically with PPLI, you're going to have much larger premiums that you're going to be obligated to. But with traditional life insurance, you could have a $50 million net worth, and you are able to get discounted dollars to take care of paying the taxes when you have the bad judgment to die, as they say in the insurance business. So yes, we also believe in using traditional life insurance as well as private placement.
Right. And I know, Vince, in your book, you talk about using alternative investments. In this particular environment, what are the top 5, would you say, alternative investment, the sectors that you believe are most for the endowment model?
Well, right now there are a lot of distressed funds that are coming out that if you have a good sourcing for that, which we do, we look for distressed opportunities for the right clients to match that up. We also have a lot of debt opportunities that are coming up right now where private equity companies may have 12 or 13% coming into them off of private deals. And they can then pay to investors an 8 or a 9% return. Some of these have liquidity today. So we like private debt today. It doesn't have nearly the volatility of the stock market. Again, it's all about diversification. In real estate, there is a lot of distressed real estate in different areas, hotels, et cetera. Hospitality is an area that if you have some discretionary capital that you want to, you find a really good manager that understands that business inside and out, and you go for some distressed hospitality, distressed hotels. Some of the retail sectors like corner of Main Street and Main Street, which has your gas stations and convenience stores and pharmacies, those are very solid long-term. Instead of being in the volatile market, they pay nice dividends, and you've got some upside to get a nice single-digit or low double-digit return consistently over time. Downside of that is you don't have liquidity in many cases. But if you diversify your portfolio right, you have plenty of other liquidity elsewhere. Nobody needs all their liquidity on the same day. Hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that does. Last question for both of you, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. Where do you see the family office world going from here? Obstacles, where do you see it going from here? I'll start with you, Vince, and then we'll end it with Angelo.
Well, I think that people have discovered that they can capture some of the top experts in the country and globally in the world to have access to help them with their money and their wealth management. And they have figured out they can do this on Zoom calls, et cetera. And so we believe that the family office, the virtual family office, is going to do nothing but continue to grow significantly because of all of the different complexities that are out there. People really don't have any one or two people that can be the expert for all the issues that come up. So they need a really strong, comprehensive team.
Angelo?
Yeah, those were great answers. And, again, Vince is very talented. And adding a little bit to the prior question, completely agree about distressed. Tail risk hedge funds, non-correlated assets. We even see trading of electricity, of railroad cars. I mean, there's some unique things out there that you would think would not be correlated to the markets. I am also a huge believer in families considering creating internally a investing arm dedicated to VC. Especially deep tech, that's more of a long-term perspective. Definitely look at opportunities in Southeast Asia. That would be one that's gravely underrated. And these are going to be long-term plays that may have tremendous, outsized returns if you have enough diversity. Relative to the future of family offices, I think it looks incredibly bright. Whether it's a single family office, which I'm going to be most active in, the related virtual family office, and even the right multifamily offices. Speaking from the single family office side, again, nothing could do what a great, there's not enough of them, but nothing could do what a great single family office could do. Privacy control and customization, 24/7 dedication to that one family, where practically everything else has a level of conflict. There is no rainmaking needed per se, unless you're maybe co-investing in some deals in an SFO. Your talent could be completely dedicated to you and your family and the skill sets and the team and camaraderie that you need internally. So no, it's not going to go away. It's getting even more attractive than ever before. And as the world gets more dangerous and risky, the more attractive it looks to, again, have your own entity completely dedicated to you.
Perfect. Well, with that, we are over 1 hour. So I want to thank, first of all, both of you, Vince and Angelo, and thank you for everybody out there that has tuned in. Hopefully you appreciate and saw the value in the presentation that we delivered. We will continue to bring, obviously, content like this. Hopefully we can have Angelo and Vince on again. Vince, obviously, we're excited to see you in Rome, Italy. You may have to practice your Italian if you're not already sharp on that. And again, everybody out there, and Angelo and Vince, stay safe and healthy, and look forward to seeing everybody very soon, and enjoy your day.
Great.
Thank you, Neil and
Neil.
Vince.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Angelo.
Take
See
care.
ya.
Thanks, guys. Great to see you.
Take care, everybody.